Oh, I didn't see you come in. I'm reading a great book. It's called The Library at the Bend in the River. It's all about the history of our library, and it's by Mary Watterson, one of our very own. Would you like to hear about it? Well, that's all right. I didn't want to read it to you anyway. Oh, now you want to hear about it. Okay. Our library started on February 21st, 1889. That was just 3 years after I was born. Mr. James Oliver, the inventor of the Oliver chilled plow, stepped in and donated money and fitted a room on the 4th floor of the luxurious Oliver Opera House at the corner of Main in Washington. We had one librarian, Miss Evelyn Humphreys, one custodian, Miss Alice Mountain, and over 1,000 books. Well, it wasn't too long before the city realized the library needed its own space. And so, on May 8, 1896, a beautiful Victorian-style building made of red sandstone with a copper tile roof opened up right here at 304 South Main Street. The South Bend Times called the new library South Bend's Pride, but around town, people just called it the Castle. Things were going so well that Miss Humphreys even got herself an assistant, one Virginia Tutt. And later that year, the 3 employees of the South Bend Library had their very first staff day. In the 30 years after the opening of the new main library, the population of South Bend quadrupled. The library had to keep up. So, in 1906, we opened our first juvenile department, and Ms. Serena Schultz was named the very first children's librarian. In 1910, we opened up substations at the South Bend Watch Factory, which is where IUSB is now, and also the Wilson Brothers Shirt Factory, which is a block west of the St. Joseph County Jail on Sample. The first official branch library opened its doors in 1918, right at the end of World War I. It was called the Washington Branch, but it would later have its name changed to the Western Branch. The River Park Branch opened 2 years after that, and then the Tutt Branch opened in 1926. The 1920s were a fun time for staff days. There was the infamous Charleston Dance Marathon of 1926. The LaSalle branch opened in 1930, but just 6 months before that, in October of 1929, the stock market crashed and the Great Depression paralyzed our country. Unemployment in the city doubled and then tripled, and yet, as unemployment went higher and higher, more and more folks turned to the library as a means of education and recreation. Most time there was barely enough room to fit people in. Folks had to wait outside in line just to use the library. Circulation numbers went through the roof, and librarians worked overtime to keep up with the demand for materials and programs. Heck, it was during the Great Depression we had our very first summer reading program. Yes, the Great Depression was one of the hardest times our country has ever had to face. But our library was a bright spot, a beacon of hope, if you will, during those rough years. In 1939, after several years of not having staff days, the library decided to have one. And as entertainment, they decided to do a parody on a movie that was very popular that year. See if you can guess what it is.
Really? Again? Why am I always in a dress?
Well, you look good in a dress.
Well, thanks. I think I look good in a dress, but when you ask other people, it just kind of gets a little conceited. And well, first things first, where are we?
Oh, we're in the Wizard of Oz. He's the Tin Man. He's the Scarecrow. You're Dorothy, and I'm the Cowardly Bunny.
There was no Cowardly Bunny in the Wizard of Oz.
Well, there is now.
Hello! I'm Ethel the Good Witch. I'm the director of the South Bend Library. I've heard from my monkey friends that the four of you have lost your way. Luckily for you, the South Bend Library can help. Cowardly Bunny, here's a book you may like. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. You should find some courage in there. And for you, Ernest Dimmock's The Art of Thinking of You. Give it a try. And Tin Man, Henry Miller's The Tropic of Cancer. And Dorothy, here's an atlas. That should get you back to Kansas.
Well, golly, thanks, Ethel Baker.
You're welcome. Those are just 4 of the thousands and thousands of books at the South Bend Library. Come see for yourself.
Well, how will we get there?
That's easy, silly. Just follow the yellow brick road.
We're off to see the library, the wonderful library of South Bend.
The library played a big role in the community during World War II also. We were the local sponsor of the Victory Book campaign and raised over 6,000 books that were sent to servicemen and women overseas. And we became the go-to spot in the community to find out news about what was happening in the European and Pacific theater. When the war was over, the library kept quite busy. Mr. Roger B. Francis took over as head librarian in 1952 and promised to bring 1952 type of library service to the people of South Bend. But, he pointed out, it was hard to do that in a building from the 19th century. He said, and I'm quoting here, "This library discourages people from coming in, and when they are in, it certainly discourages reading." Mr. Francis got his new library right here on the corner of Wayne and Main on March 1st, 1960. Spirits were so high in 1960 that a camera crew went to all the branches to capture our employees doing the latest craze.
Come on, baby, let's do the twist. Come on, baby, let's do the twist. Take me by my little hand and go like this. Yeah, twist, baby, twist. Ooh, yeah, just like this. Come on, little miss, and do the twist.
Oh, sorry, I got carried away a little bit. The building of the main library was a big thing, but a couple of years later, something even bigger happened. On July 1st, 1962, 8 school systems consolidated into the South Bend Community School District. When those districts merged, it also meant that the library's services were extended to those 7 township areas outside of the city. At first, the library used bookmobiles to reach folks, but it quickly became clear that new branches were needed. Originally called the Clay Branch, the Francis Branch opened on November 14th, 1977. That was also Mr. Francis's last day as the director of the public library. His replacement, a young whippersnapper from Boston by way of Baltimore named Don Napoli. Mr. Napoli hit the ground running. He dramatically increased the materials budget and reorganized the subject departments of the main library. Mr. Napoli also became, how should I put this, friendly with various city and state boards, and quickly earned the nickname Darth Vader. Remember, Star Wars was released just a few months before Mr. Napoli was named director. Well, if there's one thing Mr. Napoli loves more than taking on various city and county boards, it's dressing up like Darth Vader and pulling pranks on folks. In fact, for 5 straight years, the Staff Day video was just a collection of Mr. Napoli's greatest pranks. You know, the arrival of Darth Don set about a whole new wave of changes at the library, both on land and online.
We built this city. We built this.
In 1981, the volunteer program began, and in 1992, the Friends of the Library got their start. In 1983, 4 branches got brand new library-owned buildings: River Park, Tut, Western, and LaSalle. Also in 1983, we computerized the acquisitions, cataloging, and circulation departments. In 1985, we created the first automated computer cluster to go online. The North Liberty branch opened in 1986, and the Lakeville branch opened 4 years later in 1990. Also in 1990, we officially changed our name from the South Bend Library to the St. Joseph County Public Library. In 1991, we survived the Great Tyrannosaurus Rex attack thanks to Deb Feuda. In 1992, the newly renovated Main opened its doors and we started providing internet access to our patrons. We had the first Science Alive in 1993. In 1994, we became the first public library in the United States and the second in the world to run its own web servers and put up its own web page. In 1995, we started offering basic internet and computer classes to our patrons. The Center Township branch opened in 1997 and Sights and Sounds had a big remodeling in 2000. We had our first open book festival in 2002. And then the big wave of renovations came at the end of the 2000s. Western and River Park went first in 2008, and then Tut and LaSalle followed in 2009. Also that year, Francis got a new branch, and we opened the German branch. Well, here we are. We have 10 branches all over the county, north, south, east, and west. We have 222 employees. Well, probably 221 after Don Napoli sees this video. And we have 300 volunteers, and we help thousands of people. This county has had its good days and its bad days. It's had booms and it's had busts. It's been built up and torn down and built up again. But the library has been the one constant through the years. It's part of the history of our community, and it's a big, big part of its future. Well, heck, that goes for you, too. You're a big part of our history, and you're a big, big part of our future.
So many minor chords outside. I fell in love with the sound. Oh, I love to sing along with you. We got tunes we kicked around some. We got a bucket that the tunes go through. Babe, we both have dry spells, hard times, and bad lands.
Thanks for listening to me. Well, let's see. Ooh, I've got to be on desk and I better hurry or Shanti's going to yell at me. Bye-bye.
Still got it.
Happy Staff Day.